Hello everyone, welcome to Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services. It's a video on daily news and editorial analysis, which I'll be covering from the Hindu and Indian Express. The most important news and editorial of the day that is relevant for both prelims and mains examination perspective will be discussed in this session. Let's get started with the news topic list. Today is 5th of November. The first important news that is how governor can be removed. This is from the explained page of the Indian Express. Second, UGC relaxes eligibility norm for deemed university status. Third, Mathura Vrindavan to become carbon neutral destinations. Fourth, all employees can opt for EPFO pension scheme. This is what the Supreme Court recent ruling has said. And the last is an editorial, the real issue at COP27 in the energy equity, right? So we'll see the insight about this editorial and how this is going to be relevant for the mains examination. Apart from the news and editorial, at the end of this video, there will be MCQ based questions. These questions will be based on current affairs that will help you for the upcoming prelims examination. So without any further delay, let's get started. And before I begin this session, those of you who are new to our channel, do not forget to subscribe Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services on YouTube. If you like this video, if you find this video informative and helpful, do not forget to press a like button. Starting the session with the first news that how governor can be removed from the office, something important for General Studies paper 2, that is functions and responsibility of union and the state and issues and challenges pertaining to the federal structure of our country. So recently the DMK leaders of Tamil Nadu, जो DMK के leaders हैं Tamil Nadu के, they have urged the all like-minded MPs to support a proposal to remove the Tamil Nadu governor, right? There's a tussle between the ruling state government and the office of governor, right? So the office of governor and the state government is again in question. The proposal has to be addressed by the president, Draupadi Murmu. She is the president and she will take a call that what has to be decided. Under Article 155 and 156 of the Indian Constitution, the governor is appointed by the president and hold office during the pleasure of president. So if we talk about the pleasure, in this pleasure, if this pleasure is withdrawn before completion of the 5-year term, the governor has to step down. अगर राष्ट्रपति ने अपने pleasures को withdraw कर लिया, then basically the governor cannot continue, right? This is what is the rules. Now, as the president work on the aid and advice of the prime minister and the council of ministers, in this effect, the governor can be appointed and removed by the central government. So these are the basics. Constitution, this is the mandated in the constitution. This is how the actually government function. Now about the office of the governor. Office of the governor, if we talk about governor, he's a representative of the union government, right? And Article 163 of the Indian Constitution says that the governor will normally be aided and advised by the council of ministers, except in those functions that require his discretions. Now, while the governor duties and responsibilities lies in particular states, there is no provisions for impeaching the governor as such. Now, governor और state के relations की अगर बात करें, this is already envisaged as an apolitical head. He is a apolitical head of the state who must act on the advice of the council of the minister. जो state की COM है, उसके basically discussion से governor को काम करनी होती है. And when the governor enjoy certain power which is guaranteed under the Indian Constitution. First, giving or withholding the assent of the bill when it is passed by the state legislature. I think most of you must be aware because these are some of the basic concepts in the Indian polity. If you read the office of the governor, you must have read all the details. Assenting the conveying of the state legislature assembly, determining the time needed for a party to prove its majority and which party must call it so. Generally, after a hung verdict, it is an election that takes place. What happened in the case of disagreement? अगर disagreement है, so there is no provision is specifically mentioned in the Indian Constitution in this manner, and the governor and the state must be engaged publicly when there is differences of the opinion, and the management of the differences. अगर बात करें, there has been traditionally guided by the respect of each other boundaries, and even there is a limitation to certain extent where president has to intervene in this particular regard. Now, कोर्ट की रिमार्क्स की अगर बात करें इस कंटेक्स्ट में, what is important because specifically for the mains examination purpose, this is something that is going to aid your answer, right? So, since the state governor hold office at the pleasure of the president, the question has been raised against whether the governor has the security of tenure or not, because it is specifically mentioned the word pleasure of the president, right? And if the president is obliged to show the reason for recalling the governor. Now, in the two important remarks, that is Surya Narayan Chaudhary versus Union of India, the Rajasthan High Court has held that the pleasure of the president was not justiciable, and the governor has no security of tenure and can be removed any time by the president withdrawing its pleasure. So immediately when president withdraw its pleasure, the individual will be seized from the office of the governor and he has to resign. Now, the VP Singhal versus Union of India in 2010, the Supreme Court has elaborated the pleasures of doctrine, and it upheld that no limitations or restriction has been placed at the pleasure doctrine, but it does not dispense with the needed for the cause of the withdrawal of the pleasures. Now, remarks of the commissions, कुछ commissions के remarks हैं इस particular concern में. This is also going to aid your answer in mains. और specifically prelims की बात करें तो prelims में कई बार इस तरह के points आपको help करेंगे. Over there, several panel commissions have recommended reform how governor can be appointed. And Administrative Reform Commission 1968 की है जिन्होंने गाइडलाइन दी है इसको लेकर के. सरकारिया कमीशन 1988, National Commissions to Review the Working of Constitution headed by Chief Justice of India M.N. Venkatachali 2001. और सरकारिया कमीशन ने recommendations दी थी that governor are not sacked before completing the 5 year of the tenure except in the rare circumstances. तो अगर कुछ ऐसी rare और compelling circumstances होती है then only he should be removed before the completion of 5 year tenure. The recommendation has also been made for the provisions to impeach the governor by the assembly. However, none of this has been implemented. Now moving to the other news, that is UGC relaxed eligibility norms for the deemed university status, something important for General Studies paper 2, under the subtopic issues related to development and management of education and human resources. University Grant Commission, or you can call it UGC, they have recently invited the stakeholders for the draft UGC institutions deemed to be University Regulation 2022, which will replace the earlier regulation that is for 2019. Now, new category of institution बनाने की बात की गई है. The draft regulation create a new category of institution known as distinct institutions. Now, if you're writing specifically in mains, आप ये point highlight कर सकते हैं, even relevant for prelims to some extent. Now, there are institutions with focus on teaching and research with a unique discipline addressing the strategic need of the country, that is engaged in the preservations of Indian cultural heritage, preservation of environmental, dedications to skill development, and dedications to sport and any other languages. So this is how the new institution category will be formed. These institutions will be exempted from the eligibility criteria to lay down for the other higher educations and receive the deemed university status. तो जो दूसरे institutions को criteria fulfill करनी होती है उससे बहुत सारे criteria से exemption मिलेगी जो distinct institution बनाए जाएंगे. Now, this includes the accreditations by the National Assessment and Accreditation Council with at least 3.01 CGPA with a 3 consecutive cycle. Among the top 50 and 100 will be given as a national institution ranking framework, which is released by the Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education की अगर बात करें, it releases the national institution ranking framework. Now, neither way they will be required to comply with the requirement of teacher-student ratio of 1:20, which is normally required for a deemed university. So again, this basically part can also be something that is initially neither will be required, because this is a mandatory category for any deemed university which will be given exemption. Among the other important challenges that propose an institution will not be required for the existence of 20 years before seeking the status. तो पहले क्या था, अगर जिस institution को UGC से deemed university की category में जाना है उसे 20 साल पूरे करने होंगे उस academic field में as an institution, as an establishment, then only they can get it. So this exemption has been provided for distinct university or institution categories. Now, authority for granting the permission, कौन कौन से ऐसे authority बनाई गई है जो कि deemed university की अब status को recognize करेंगे. So UGC will be now the body, the nodal body, the apex body, and not the Ministry of Education. A very important point that you can take a note of. कई बार UPSC से directly आपसे prelims में सवाल पूछेगी कि कौन से authority के पास ये power. So UGC will have the power to grant the permissions to deemed university with set up with an off campus, like जो off campus centers होंगे उनके लिए specifically the power lies with the UGC. Also, the cluster of the government or the private institutions that are either for the same sponsored body, differing the sponsorship body can apply for the status. Now, Mathura Vrindavan to become the carbon neutral destination, something important for General Studies Paper 3, that is the government policies and intervention for the development of various sector and issues arising from design and implementation. So, this is actually part of General Studies Paper 2. According to Uttar Pradesh government officials, Mathura Vrindavan, one of India's largest pilgrimage center, aims to become net zero carbon emissions tourist destinations by 2041. Although this would be a part of efforts of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, India will be celebrating its 100th year of independence by 2047. The draft redevelopment plan की अगर बात करें, as per the Uttar Pradesh government, the draft redevelopment plan of all 252 water bodies and 24 forests in the area will also be revived. According to the plan, the Braj region, the annual pilgrimage footfall की अगर बात करें, this will be multiplied by 2.3 crores by 2041. And keeping this in mind, there's a need to have eco-friendly development areas which will aid the boost of local economy and also have the adverse basically do not have the adverse impact on the environment. Now, net zero emissions के लिए कुछ targets बनाई गई हैं. So, what is basically net zero carbon emission in this context? Now, to attain the net zero carbon emission status, the greenhouse emission must be reduced to zero, possibly, which remain emissions are the reabsorbed from the atmosphere by ocean and the forest. Now, to facilitate this, Mathura Vrindavan plans to have an entire region into 4 clusters containing 2 with 8 key cities, right? So this will be the redevelopment process, and even achieving the target of net zero emission can be done by executing on this. The use of electric vehicle is something very important, and this can be the game changer in this context to achieve the target. So the target set by the draft development plan for the tourist will be banded. Basically, जितने भी tourist vehicles हैं वो allowed नहीं किए जाएंगे ब्रज के region में, right? Which include the famous pilgrimage of Vrindavan and Krishna Janmabhoomi. And instead of electric vehicles, basically only electric vehicle will be allowed, और जो public transport के तौर पे लोगों को सुविधाएं देंगी, right? So electric vehicle is what government is looking for as a promotion, and the plan envisages 3 to 5 charging points for the electric vehicles at Mathura, Vrindavan, and many other sites in the town. All employees can opt for EPFO pension scheme. This is what the Supreme Court has to say. Something important for General Studies Paper 2, that is the government policies and intervention for the development of various sectors and issues arising from a design and implementation. Recently, the Supreme Court has upheld the Employment Pension Amendment Scheme 2014, the Employees Provident Fund, as a legal and valid while reading down the certain provisions. The Supreme Court ने कहा है that it used its extraordinary power under Article 142 of the Indian Constitution, which to allow the eligible employee who are not opted for enhanced pension coverage prior to 2014 amendment, तो उनको भी include करने की बात की गई, and to do so their employment within the next 4 months. So the Supreme Court has asked the department to execute it at the earliest. क्या है आर्टिकल 142 जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट को एक्सक्लूसिव पावर देती है? आर्टिकल 142 of the Constitution provide discretionary power to the Supreme Court of India and states that the Supreme Court, in exercise of the judicial, may such pass a decree to make an order necessary for doing complete justice in any cause of the matter pending before it. Exemptions की अगर बात करें, the court struck down the requirement of 2014 amendment that the employees who go beyond the salary threshold of 15,000 should contribute monthly to a pension scheme at a rate of 1.6% of their salary. This is for the requirement. Now the exemption has been given in this regard, and the requirement to contribute 1.6% of the salary extend to the salary which is above 15,000 per month is an additional contribution made by the amendment, and it was considered as ultra virus by the provisions of the Employment Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provision Act of 1952. So this is what the Supreme Court in its latest decision has said. Now about the EPS amendment in 2014 की जो amendment थी, that includes the changes in the clauses and insertion of the paragraph 11 and the capping of 6,500 to 15,000. And this paragraph 11.4 only said that the employer who have existing EPS member as on the September 14 could also continue to contribute with the pension fund in the advance according to the actual salaries. Now they were given the window of 6 months to opt for the new position and regime. However, the court has removed the off date in 2015 amendment with the employees who retired prior to September 1, 2014 without exercising any option were entitled for the benefit of the judgment. So the beneficiaries which were actually not the part of it should also be provided with such benefit, and even जो exemptions दी गई हैं that will also help for the other part of the contribution. So EPS amendment in such can be relevant for the mains examination specifically, and even for the government program that is related to it, a question can be directly framed in the prelims examination. Creation of EPS की अगर बात करें, employees of the various establishment covered under the Employee Provident First Miscellaneous Act 1952. This provide for the fund and name of the employees covered under the establishment, and this account of the employees contribute 12% of his or her basic salary as an employer contributor an equal amount. The section 6A was inserted in Article Act authorizing the creation of scheme to provide pension to the employees. Now moving to the editorial of the day, the real issues at COP27 is energy equity, something important for General Studies paper 3, that is environmental creations, conservations, environmental pollutions and EIA. Now, what are the issues that I'll be discussing under this editorial? So first, talking about theme, issues at COP27, क्या-क्या इंडिया की प्रायोरिटी होनी चाहिए, और एनर्जी इक्विटी की बात करें उसे कैसे एग्जीक्यूट करने की जरूरत है, ग्लोबल एनर्जी इनइक्वालिटी की बात करेंगे, hypocrisy of the global north and equitable priority that should be there. So the upcoming 27th Conference of Parties beginning from November 6, it actually started basically, and the framework that called for the impetus on the global commitment for the fighting of the climate change. So in run up to COP26, the Glasgow में जो बात हुई net zero emissions की बात की गई थी, बहुत सारे countries ने 2050 के target set किया. India has set a net zero emission target by 2070, and the declaration did not square the requirement keeping 1.5 degrees Celsius above, which was there a part of the Paris climate change. Now, 4th to 5th of the global budget limited the 1.5, that is with 50% probability that will be exhausted. Developed countries are responsible for more than of this historical CO2 emissions, because every country who is a part of PCC, that is Paris climate change, has to mandate that they are moving forward with the net zero emissions. Now, global energy inequality की अगर बात करें, so global energy poverty is concentrated in developing countries. In 2021, the 733 million people has no access to electricity, and almost 2.6 billion people lacked access to clean fuel and technologies. The average per capita energy use of the richest 20 countries is in 85 times higher than that of the 20th poor countries. Addressing this stark energy poverty in developed countries, the importance is that there is a strong correlation between the energy supply and the human development. In reality, the global inequality was acutely evident during the COVID-19. बहुत सारे ऐसे countries हैं, जब बात करें Africa, Asia, Latin America, these countries have been severely facing industrial shutdown and during the post-COVID also and pandemic also, there's something repercussion was also seen. The lack of reliable energy infrastructure has compounded the difficulties in the multi-dimensional impact across the developmental indicators, and these inequalities have been aggravated by the soaring of energy and food prices. Hypocrisy in the global north की अगर बात करें, and basically the United Nations, 81 of the primary energy is from the fossil fuel. The countries that include Europe, fossil fuel constitute 76%, coal, oil and natural gases that contribute 11, 31 and 34%. Now 30 years after the acknowledgement of the problem of the anthropogenic global warming commitment, UNFC has a global north as a their contribution is very minimal. In July 2022, European Union voted to classify the natural gases as some of the greener and sustainable alternative. Natural gas was responsible for 7.5 billion ton, that is 23% of the total carbon as a major fossil fuel by 2020. Equitable priorities की बात की गई है at COP27. The global south, that is the Latin America, Caribbean countries, Pacific and Asian country that exclude Israel, Japan and South Korea, must have a question on energy poverty to have a severe inequalities in access to squarely have a centric discussion on that. And there's need to achieve the zero emissions, zero malnutrition, zero poverty and universal well-being as even will collectively contribute to ensure the effective climate change. Now moving to the MCQ questions of the day, before I proceed, just to tell you the answers of yesterday questions. For first question, the correct option is C. For second question also, the correct option is C. Today's MCQ for practice, Mathura Setu project. Mathura Setu symbolizes bilateral relation and friendly ties between India and Sri Lanka. The project is being taken by Land Port Authority of India. Second question is between the district 2, India and Sri Lanka are part of it. India, Japan, Russia, India and Afghanistan, India and Uzbekistan. So do check it out for the correct option. This type of question might be relevant for the upcoming prelims examination. So if you have any other concern, you can let me know. I'll be more than happy to assist. This is the discussion all about with the daily news and editorial analysis, followed by the MCQ questions. Thank you so much for watching this video.